All right, guys, welcome back. In today's video, we are going to be drinking Party Wave. This is a hazy pale ale from Slackwater Brewing out of Penticton, British Columbia. This beer actually came strongly recommended by Matthew Auger. So thank you, Matthew, for the recommendation. Redbeard Fly Fishing, go ahead and check him out on Instagram. I gotta say, I'm a little bit nervous for this one. I'm not much of a hazy guy. But we'll see how this one goes. All right, guys, cheers. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, ooh, that is good. That is delicious. It's hazy, but it's not too bad. Anyways, let's turn this camera around and we will see you guys on the vise. All right, guys, welcome back. We are tying in the Damselfly Nymph today. A fantastic stillwater pattern. I know I say that every time, but when damsels are popping off, this is one fly pattern that you're going to want to have in your fly box. Cheers. Okay, so hooking the vise. I've got a size 12 Togans curved, just Togans nymph hook. This is a 1X long, super versatile hook. I use these quite a bit. And then the thread I'm using is just a UTC 70. This is just a green color, just to kind of match with everything. The first bit of material that we're gonna use is our mono eyes. So this is a size mini. Super easy to tie into. You can actually make these yourselves with monofilament and a lighter, but to tie these in, I always like to start with the mono eyes parallel to the hook shank, give about 2 wraps over top, and then just twist this perpendicular, and then just come over there with a couple of thread wraps. I did put this a little bit too far behind though, so I'm just gonna bring my thread closer. So 2, twist it perpendicular, and then figure 8 wraps just to secure it in. And you'll notice I left a bit of a space behind the hook eye there for our thorax and for the head of the fly. And we are ready for our first bit of material, which is going to be some marabou for our tail. So I'm just going to rip off some section at the back here and get rid of all that garbage at the end, just for a nice tie-in point. Bring that in, and don't worry about the bugginess left over there. We're gonna cinch all that down anyway. So for the length of the tail, general rule of thumb is that you want to have it at the same length as your hook shank. Damsels tend to swim kind of like a snake in the water, so a bit longer of a tail is always a good thing, just to give you a little bit more movement in the water. So that looks pretty good. I always like to kind of come in here and rip off a bit of the top and a bit of the bottom, just to kind of give it more of a, I don't know, more of a natural tail look, I suppose. Okay, so for flash in the tail, we're going to be using some Krystal flash. And I'm just using a UV pearl color. So I'm just going to tie that in on my side here first. Bring that excess over to your side. Tie that in. And then trim that to length. I like to do it a little bit shorter than the tail, because again, we're just going for highlights here. We don't need it to stand out too much. So that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to move my thread just behind those eyes so we can tie in our wire. And you can see what I mean, like everything got cleaned up there pretty good. So for the wire, ultra wire. This is a golden olive, size small. We're going to tie that in right behind those eyes. And then just work our thread back to where the tail starts. Leave our thread there because we're going to be tying in some pheasant tail. Just going to grab about 4 or 5 plumes off the off the stem there. Rip those off. Cut off that butt section just to give us a nice tie-in point. And then we're going to be tying that in directly on top of the hook shank. And you can kind of do a bit of a test and pull that forward. You don't want too much of a gap in between the pheasant tail and your tail. So I can kind of come back maybe even a little bit further there. So that's starting to look a bit better. There we go. And then we can use our, start using our body. So for the body, I'm going back to the marabou. Just gonna grab a good half dozen plumes. We're actually gonna be tying these in from the tips just to give it more of a natural taper look. So I'm gonna snip the tips off just to give us a tie-in point. And then now I can move my thread to behind the eyes. And then without ripping any strands, give this a twist. And then just start up the body. This is where a rotary vise would come in handy. And if you do drop it, it's no big deal. You can just restart. And if you have a strand like that that wants to go out, we can try to lock that in. Secure that behind the eyes, trim off the excess. And there's our marabou body with kind of a natural taper look to it. We can bring our pheasant tail forward, right over top there. And secure that in behind the damsel eyes. And we're gonna leave that there, do not cut that part. And bring our wire forward. And then if you kind of wiggle the wire, we can try to avoid to trap any of those marabou plumes. And we're looking for about anywhere to 4 to 5 kind of segments. And that's just gonna help secure everything in, add a level of durability, excuse me, to the fly, and seal that off. So I'm doing 3 wraps behind just to make sure we're covered, and then give that wire a helicopter, and it'll come off just like that. So our fly's starting to take shape here. We got a nice tail, a nice little body. Now we just need to work on our thorax and head. So I'm just gonna bring those pheasant fibers back a bit here to create a bit of a gap. And we can tie in our partridge feathers for the legs. So I'm just using a Hungarian partridge feather. This is an olive color, so they do come in browns, olives, naturals. The olive color looks really good with this one. The feathers look like this. So what we're gonna do is peel back all of these plumes, expose that stem, and then I'm gonna grab the tips, kind of fan those other fibers back. And essentially what we're doing is we're creating a little Mercedes-Benz logo or a peace sign. And you'll notice that the feather's got a natural curve to it. So what we want to do is align the top of the feather out towards the hook point, and then right at that segment where we separated, that's where we want to tie it in, right on top. So if you have to move it a little bit, and then just secure that in. And then we're going to trim off that centerpiece. And then I'm just going to do a couple figure-8 wraps just to make sure it's secured in spot in place. And then we can work on our little thorax and head here. So you can use dubbing for this. I'm actually going to be using marabou. So if I take off just a couple strands, cut off those butt sections, You can actually form this right onto your thread like a dubbing noodle. Marabou is a great dubbing to use, as you'll see here in a second as we start wrapping this up. So you can do figure eights just to kind of crowd everything. We're going to go over it again, so that's good for right now. Now we want to form our legs. So we're going to bring our feather forward, and then with my left hand I'm going to sweep all those feathers back just behind those eyes. Come in here with our thread, go behind the eyes with a couple thread wraps. Remove that top feather. And then I'm gonna go back to my marabou, get a couple more plumes, and just form another dubbing noodle. Just so we can finish off that head and hide our thread and beef that up a little bit. So that's looking really good. Now we're going to take our pheasant tail and we're just going to split the D. We're going to split it so we have legs coming out on either side there. This part always gets a little tricky just because some of the fibers get trapped or they don't sit nicely, but it fishes really well. Good movement in the water too. Now we can trim off our pheasant tail. And we got two partridge feathers there that kind of got trapped, but we're going to take those out here in a sec. Get our whip finish tool. Secure that head down. Make sure everything is nice and snug. And now we can kind of finesse the fly a little bit and make sure we got our legs facing in the right direction. Make sure they're coming off both sides. And we can take off these pieces that the fish won't mind, but they don't look great to the fly fisherman, right? So there we go. So we got a realistic looking Damselfly Nymph pattern there. Great pattern to fish with. It's a lot of fun casting and retrieving this, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy that. Thank you so much for watching, and cheers, and fish on.